recycled repeatedly. Much good
Nice
stuff.
song.
Oh.
We're on? Welcome. Welcome to spring in New England. I want to start here today, if I can. Perianth. By far the best farmers lovers are, whose bodies glisten in the light they make and throw so carelessly around them in molten afternoons. Husbandry is what it takes to make the world splash in our heads, exploding water light so nothing's unhinged, the far-fetched pleasure. By Foster, the greenness comes again. New, arising flower world, sweetness sucked of naked berry. Afternoons are molten because melting is consequence of whatever passionate perception. Without fusing them, the flower of mind makes all things capable of extremity, not adjectival, concentering, as that toy lovers like us melt, reform, in solar innovation, our substances now justified anew, made accurate by bliss, a balance, a tempering, a style. Perianth is the word I wrote, meaning the sepals and petals, to remind me of the floral unity of love, and also how we double on ourselves the world when our bodies shoot and the heavens open, how we suffice each other in ourselves. The loss of Garrett Lansing, who was, the dearness of his friendship since I met him in 1987 is profound to me and to so many of you I know. And to this series, Garrett was one of the innovators of word of mouth, because he was shoving me from underneath, as was Bill Corbin. And it comes to us now, I believe, so very strongly to tend to his work and to set it off on its journey and to renew ourselves in it, and go back to it and make a visit. I have a little gloss in the room here. So with that in mind, I'm going to be proposing, and nobody needs to sign up now, but what I have in mind to do is, for the opening of the season next September or October, whenever we decide the weather's going to let us back out here, I think I want to try to do a complete reading of Heavenly Tree. And for that, I will be begging any of you who want to participate to let me know, and we'll divvy up poems, and we'll start in and read it straight through, all the way through, no breaks, no nothing. We'll have coffee and food in the room, and just listen to it and mark ourselves going forward from there. Okay. So with that, let me turn to Mr. Pritchett, because it is just wonderful to have him here today. I kept thinking to myself, here's the line that kept coming to me about you, that you're a poetic sleeper cell. lurking out in the western burbs now, you know. I mean, so long ago I met you at Bill's. I came to that little chapbook that he put out of yours, which was a good book. And I thought, well, yeah, that guy's doing nice work. And we kept bumping into one another, and suddenly you appeared. Christina might even remember, but did an introduction at Harvard, which was so acute and beautiful and worth sitting through. I think that's what I told you. Oh. I have groveled over your introductions, madam. Don't do that to me. You are a master, but this was a gorgeous thing that set that afternoon, and then I started looking at the rest of the work and at the life that you have had and the activity that you've been doing, and it's just extraordinary. And then you come up with this book. He has a new book, ORPHIC Noise. May I?
Yes.
For your pleasure, available at SPD and Amazon. And I've been eating my way through it for the last couple of weeks. It is a great, great achievement. You should be proud of this book. I'm happy to know you and happy to have you come in here today and get this room going for the spring. Please welcome Patrick Pritchett.
position, so it's kind of comfortable actually.
No sleeping.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for that very generous, magnanimous introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I love what you've done with the place. It's just incredible. I assume you're referring to the Nate Mackey introduction. Is that it?
I can't remember who it was.
Yeah,
What I remember is quite literally this, that you opened the work, you opened the place of the work, and then you opened the place that was behind the work, and in a completely not schoolish way at all. It was from a poetic point of view, and it was a gorgeous piece of.
Very kind of you, and it means a lot to me, and it's great to be here, and it's great to be reading with my good friend Peter Gizzi.
Vice versa.
Yeah, and I particularly like that you started us off with the remembrance of Garrett, who we all miss. I wrote a poem for him. It's not a very good one, so I'm not going to read it, but it's in Gnostic frequencies, if you're curious. But I'm just going to be reading from ORPHIC Noise today. There are a few poems in here for some dear friends who happen to be here. I'm not going to contaminate the poems with interstitial patter, as I often do. But I will explain that the...
What was that word?
It's different when you say those words out loud.
Tell me more, Patrick. Tell me more.
In my head it sounded different. The epigraph of this poem is from the movie Serenity, the Joss Whedon movie based on the series Firefly. ORPHIC Noise. They can't stop the signal, Mal. The real language of the world is the world. Its noise, a form of shelter, radiating signals, untraceable vectors, wistful ghost songs veering away. Go out after breakfast, the street streaked with shine and alone as you were meant to be, yet never more alive. It's not the noise makes you dream as you walk, but without noise, who can dream anything? Only by noise can the dead remember us and translate memory into belonging. The dead who remember nothing but the tag ends of noise. Songs Requiem, Burnt Elysium. The Book of Song, Mark 0. This is for Nate Mackey. And if, as the man says, the song says, no going forward without a song, if the measures will only rise aloft when its cadence suspends the cramped history of living. The Book of Song is drenched in sugar, but inflamed by salt. It holds all our shadows in the chrism of suffering, naked as a zero. It says you must be haunted by the labyrinth of each minute until one of them opens to a room inside a room, the space where you live and forget to live, and must remember all over again how to meet the premise of dawn with a noise from nowhere. Radio Logos. When she closes her eyes, she writes the prophetic book that dreams you as otherwise. A world no longer green, but snowed under and flowing, it sees you through 1,000 trembling ray-bands. No hope, she says, for a Holy Ghost, only Logos, mute and lost. Like that time in East Hampton when the sparrows flew furious to the porch rail, dark dolls in the dust, crushing ruin with aria. And all at once a flood-tide sensorium raining through every window. Their clamor scraped its ragged raga against the mist and cold, made you wish for some old song on the radio, some carol, some chant, some interstellar melody. You broke me once with your albums full of moonlight, your substitute ballads for love. Because a woman will slake a man in her arms and dream him all sweet bedlam. But a man will go mad just seeing in the dark alone, unhaloed as a stone. This is for Keith Jones, my dear friend, the guide signs. And this, I will say something about the origin of this poem. We once had a project where we were going to do a bunch of riffs on Jay Wright's work, and I don't know if this is the only one I wrote. Are you still doing it?
More or less.
Okay, I'm glad you're keeping up your end of the deal. We'll talk later. The guide signs for Keith Jones. May your iron bell speak well, friend, and the lore of its tone retune the world, its gift flame with the language of the solar wind. All ornament burns away. The crystal orbit of the moon remains pearlescent, undecayed. Speak of bewitched crossroads, their hymnody and broken staves, because the profane gives us signs and shards, fragments of paradise, where the found is also the maid and the coda, both ghost thrum and doorway, entrance to the underrealm of lost prismatic light. Perjury. This is a poem for whoever goes out into the late evening air, when the sun's gone down and the taste of the bells lingers sourly in the blind hill. This is a poem for the not knowing how it turns out right, for keeping faith in the failure of everything, because isn't everything already crushed? Today I awoke into the black sweetness of coffee and the kisses of my wife slicing up apples, and the thought that what holds us is not a promise, no, but the taunt of hope, its banner begrimed by smoke and no end of its thin, strutting vernacular. But here is the cat, who surmises exactly his every chance and is not swift but when he wants to be. We should emulate him so. In a way, every poem is a lie. It says that to say is to be committing a kind of perjury against the stars. The road through the field is older than the field. There is no other way home. This poem commemorates a visit that Christina and Fanny and Penn Creeley and I made some years ago to Bob Creeley's gravesite in Mount Auburn. Mount Auburn in May for Penn Creeley. Afterwards, there wasn't anything. No double suns at sunset, the ground smoldering. Just this weird, implacable, perfect quiet, full of rain and not full of anything. A voice across the green saying, "Hey," and then a sparrow drops in a blur of shivers. We were talking by the grave, the sunlight catching each smooth rock set atop the stone's ledge. You said his ashes were placed in a small box. The ashes were draped in a shawl you threw in. The master and his dog mixed at last to soft sift. And when we looked up, the trees were blooming, the sky all white with balloons. And we went down to the river singing, but it was not finale. Only the day breaking open, and the roads as pages, each loft, writing back to us from the end of time. And there's a story that some of you may know. I'll just interject this briefly. That Bob and Penn had a dog, a beloved, I forget what it was it a Bouvier Poodle? Yeah. The dog died not long after Bob died, and Penn had the dog's remains cremated and then sort of snuck in, and the grave site was still soft, and she sort of filtered the dog's ashes and hit the grave with Bob, which I found very moving. A faux naif. It is I, my love, the writer of bad checks, the faithless one, paramour to the blank hebetude of night, the man without a tongue. I am coming back from somewhere. A crystal is growing inside my head. It dances the slenderest volume of fire, and I love it when one word changes into another, just like a song. I am coming back, my love, from the railroad tracks' lonely, boozeless colloquy. I didn't find anything anywhere. Heard much bad music, and now I'm very tired. Sunderland. Especially now, the empty lullaby of leaves in a blue hour, made bluer still by all the empty saints of love. No hour is a shadow, but a shadow crowns the mountain. The river of rivers slides through its glacial furrow, murmuring cold syllables, giving the buried dream a flower. It was supposed to be a day for saints, pale blue ones high up in the sky, and the light at 3 o'clock blinding the roads into conflagration. In Sunderland once, I was cursed by your gray blue eyes looking over an ice cream cone. struck broadsides, I said amen, and burned me right down to the ground. November was no flower. Sorry, I'm getting like choked up. Most of these poems are about loss. November was no flower, but its arches are shadowed with shadow. And it is shadow that drives the short days down, and on the road to Sunderland, everything is empty. Like a utopian ode for November. And if you cared to set a name to it, then why not call it the last hum of November, sun on a patch of grass, the dust of the world scratching at the end of a day, which is only the end of my little street shining in its splintered clapboard prism. Under Mount Tom's talus slopes, I reread Emerson, who asks, how can we not see the rampant glory of this world, which is like asking, how can we fail to live out the richness of our losses? Is it that we forgot how to speak a common tongue? On my desk, a plastic fox sniffs a plastic hedgehog. There is no star to guard against this, no shining sigil, no celestial brightness, not even a rock shadowed by night's halo to signify the fissure of yearning from true knowing. I will go up now into the land of dream, its blank utopian horizon, that bends over my desolate wish to suspend time and live purely by amending its crooked rhyme. If to ask for this is to ask for everything, then erase the protections of fragile words and settle for drifting mutely through shadows, the casual subway psalms by which we pledge each cracked step to the top of the platform in the name of all the departed in their lonesome shoes like Kafka's lost prayer books. Hope irradiates, a recalcitrant virus swarming out from Earth's black corners. This world's matter, its endless dirt, thirst for reignition. This poem is from Fanny Howe. Song X, a prayer. Then she was what prayer said she was, a river poured into a river, the same law moving, and in the same light the face of whoever saw her moving, lavish by brightness, moving like a river. Tabula errata, the fever infecting every page, a candle murmuring sotto voce, burn it down to the ground. A river will melt a will, define such sweet expenditure. What was the tale about ruin and returning, about the one who was sent out and came back haunted? To be haunted, be hunted. That was what she said prayer was, the weakness of the soul as it goes down, giving off all the things that float, carried off one by one, surrendered to the air whose other name is river. How long have I been reading?
You're
Not
fine.
long.
You're good.
Longer than Fanny reads. But shorter than everyone else.
Fanny is the master minimalist. This is true. All right. I'll back up a little here. I don't want to read that one. How to Look for Christina Davis. This is from an experiment that Christina had set up at the Lamont, the Woodbury Poetry Room in Lamont, where there was like a little desk looking out over part of Harvard Yard, and we're supposed to sit down and write a poem or something like that. Was that it? Yeah. I think
I
I was
lied
probably
and
the only one
said-
who did it. Seemed like
That
a
was
good
part of the experiment.
All right. How to look. Spy, she said, into the heart of the world, the abandoned, the cratered, the mute inventory of fuel. Don't be sentimental. This is the world. Nostalgia is a home for fools. Note, if you must, the bare trees, blackened with rain, leaves crumpled up in grass. or that they are walking past arm in arm and laden with books, heads down. Don't emphasize how precious this is, or how it will soon be gone. Forget the obnoxious white New England steeple of Memorial Church. Fuck Mem Church.
Okay, but I didn't say that.
Whatever you do, don't mention birds. Make the poem a brick, in your eye a toad. Song is easy, but this is the world. This poem is called Bel Canto. Who are the dead but the unanswered? Names of the swum under gone aloft through night, hazarded by wing, unsigned and alone. To be dead is to fume, Bel Canto. Further than a fading match flares its octave on a porch, late summer night, your voice speaking low, ORPHIC boat athwart a wooden pier. Each oar breaks, and every streetlight's a comma, longing to complete the supernatural grammar of the sentence. Desire rounded to the perfect zero. Oh, child, in your small ritual, an hour of the day makes the long hair of the grave wave in vowels of deranged speech that only the resurrected can truly hear. And daily they seek, and daily go unsaved. I'll read just a couple more here. This is simply called and, or I suppose more exactly ampersand. You want to make the noise that only comes once. The glass shivering vibraphonic echo, a murmur from dawn cascade wonder that shakes the golden spire. Refrain locational as Wednesday or a laboratory retriever. A singular syllabic ode and gasp that goes beyond language, as if language could survive its own relapse or remain inside one small wayward tone. Radar's electric swan rolling over black water, the tranquil agate of a cat's eyes, or the way a sparrow chirps and hiccups in the plain of green and endless sorrows. I'll close with these two poems. This first one is called Untitled, and it was a poem that I contributed to the omnibus collection that Bill Corbett put together for, the marathon, Boston Marathon. And in my dream I dreamt, what, my love? That I was whole, and you would come to me again? Or else that I had never left and you held me as I am, broken into new regimes of tenderness. Of the light of morning say it grows aortic, emerald, open, a music caught within the trees' deep sway and bend. The body rises till it floats, a long, undulant wave, riding over cold pavement and red sirens and bright sky. The day will last forever, until it ends. And this is the final poem. It's 5 final poems. Yes, it's actually titled 1. He said gravity bends delight toward oblivion. I think this is simple, but then Holderlin is simple. The way an apple falls through light, its white core sliced in wet trails, is incandescent. I want a balcony, a final sunset, the martini at the end of the world. 2. Could the song begin? Could it refold its own design? Could the art consist of the excluded's lost melody? Could signs be empty and full? Could the blind walk in green fields and the dead rise up and be happy again? Could I still see you? 3. Remember this day, boys. A gaze burns through the ether. The ether's not real, but it burns anyway. Remember the Horta's vow, the altar of tomorrow. I went down to the city, slipped in the snow. Kay was there and she was smiling. I thought of Elle, her voice, her eyes. Flakes fell from a fresh croissant. 4. March begins amends. Fewer than mystery. My year of sorrow and my year of dust, my year of walking through shadow to amber. And my hymn, you ask me, how far does it go? Who is its hero? Can he sing the lost splendors? What is the earth that a child could say it? 5. We who had followed you swore a word at your grave, placed pebbles on your stone, leaves that time of year, the bowed heads of the women, There are flowers not engendered by the earth. What soil is theirs? Who is their king? A day without thirst is uncouth. Liturgical cadence of sunset. Thank you.
I'm reminded of, there's a wonderful story of Robert Duncan when he was teaching at New College, apparently walking into class one day and wheeling around, and you must understand when he wheeled around you had this crossed-eyed look coming at you, and he pointed to a young woman in the front row and said, "What is the primary sound of myth?" At which she burst into tears. And he jumped on her and grabbed her and hugged her and giggled and said, "Oh my God, yes. Thank you, what's wonderful." When the poem is unburdened by as-is and likes, it actually shakes us, and it's a beautiful thing to see, and that's why that book is so incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that reading, it was just fabulous. 29 or so years ago, when I was running around, as I was a few minutes ago, trying to get everything set in the basement at Tapas Restaurant, I suddenly realized there was this man who was wandering around photographing everybody. And I watched him as he went through. I'd never seen him before. I had no idea who he was. And he was taking photographs at angles and wonderful, very artistic looking things. And I walked over to him and I said, "So, who are you?" And he said, "Well, I'm Ben." And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "What are the photographs for?" And he said, "What's it to you?" And I said, "Are you working for the CIA?" And he says, "I'm not saying." So finally I gave him a couple more shelves and discovered that this was Ben Watkins, who was a dear friend of Mr. William Corbett's, and he had come down there and started the document of that series comes from his finger, his hand, his eye, and his photographs have been part of my imagination for 29 years now. They've been on the covers of many, many major collections, yours as well, if I remember correctly. Michael Palmer, Norma Cole, and so on. And they're just vital to me, and I love having them up here. I so appreciate you giving them to us. And Ben has said that he's got a few things that he'd like to say about the pictures and to sort of place us with them. So please welcome Ben Watkins.
Back in the late 80s, I was biking around the city, scavenging for photographs, and I started noticing these strange inscriptions on public places, and started taking shots of them. I didn't know for no particularly good reason. It turned out my daughter Jennifer was doing the same thing around the same time, and both drawn by the abstruse quality of the writing. Once the poet W.S. DiPiero was staying with us, and I showed him these things, and he said, "Oh my God, if only my writing students at Stanford could show a bit of such imagination." And then over the years, they kept coming back and haunting me, and I started thinking of embedding them in photographs of mine, and figured out how to do this with computers. And the point is, I guess the point of my photographs have always been to remain as obscure as possible. And so I thought these cryptic utterances appearing in public fit right in. And that's about it. It turns out that this guy, who is to Jennifer and I remained anonymous, actually was known to an artist some of you may have known, named Paul Laufey, who had a studio on Bromfield Street downtown. And at some point he noticed there was a homeless person, sort of not lurking, but hanging in doorways on Bromfield Street, which is easy enough to do. There are a lot of places there that are kind of obscure. And on a particularly cold winter night, apparently Paul invited the guy in, found out, started talking to him. He was quite open, very nice. And turns out he was a graduate of MIT, who had been an engineer, who had had a responsible position and then had a psychic break. And his conversation was essentially of the kind that you see on these writings. And Paul became friendly with him and let the guy stay in there on particularly bad weather to sleep over in his place, and eventually lost track of him. And we have lost track of him. We have no idea what happened to him, what became of him. The writings have never shown up again. I've never heard of them in any other cities. So if any of you here have any follow-up on this, please let me know. I'll go there and take photographs of them.
You all set?
We're good to go.
So, I will go back to a different place, but the same place as I was when I was introducing Carol Weston, because when Mr. Duncan died, the first thing I did was I headed to Gloucester to talk to Garrett. And I sat at Garrett's table with him, sort of bemuddled, not knowing what to do. I remember saying, I just don't know what to do, but I need to do something. And Garrett sat there and said, yes, you do. And so what are you going to do? And I said, well, I want to set up a memorial immediately. I don't want to wait. I want to do it now. And he said, do it. And he wrote out a bunch of phone numbers and addresses for me to contact people, and turned around and said, but the one thing you should do is that anybody that wants to do it, you should let them. And I kind of, well, really? And he said, yes, yes. If they want to be there, they should be there. And I remember walking out the door saying, well, that's dangerous and scary, and that's exactly what we should do. So that garnered me, by that design, Carol Weston and Charlie Shively and Mr. Peter Gizzi, because I didn't know who you were. I'd never heard your name. I'm pretty sure it came through Bill.
Yeah.
And Peter called me up and said he wanted to read the torso, which I found a bold and daring and crazy thing to want to read. And he came in, and as the three people that did the greatest job that day were Carol and Charlie and you. And just blooming into those poems and riveting the room and making it just this sort of, for me, this divine intervention into the sadness that I felt at losing him, Mr. Duncan. So time passed, and Peter kept popping up here and there, and we were all watching him. You're about, what, a good 12 years younger than me, and so you were kind of a kid at that time, you know, as we were feeling our poetic oats. And he went off, went west to Buffalo, started Oblique. What year would that be?
87 I started Oblique,
yeah. And then what year did you start at Buffalo?
91.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right around that time.
That period of time, and all that stuff was coming out of there. I remember a lovely, when we first went to Buffalo, you don't know this story. We were sitting at Mr. Corbett's dinner table. He must have just gotten back from Vermont. It was early September or late August. And in the midst of the hubbub that some of you know was at that table, the phone was ringing, and Bill picked up the phone and was talking to somebody at the end of the table as we all went merrily on screaming, yelling at one another. And at some point I remember Bill saying, Peter, 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 it's Buffalo. And Bill hung up the phone and we said, what? And he says, oh hell, it's snowing. And you had just arrived up there. And so it's Buffalo became this wonderful catchphrase for anything that was completely fucked up as it was supposed to be. And it went on for years. And over the years, I mean, on that basis, the work that you did with the magazine, the work that you did at Buffalo, it kept lurking there off in the distance, coming in to things that I needed to have over and over again that were being produced, and slowly but surely the poetry of Peter Gizzi started to emerge out of that. And as I told him the last time I heard him read, it has blossomed into what I think of now is a major poetry. I would give my eye teeth to be able to write at the level and at the extent that you are writing at. It's just a wonderful thing to see and to have you here amongst us. So please welcome him back to this reading series.
Thank you, Michael, for that gracious introduction. I hope I can rise to the occasion.
That's what she said.
Let that one go. I think I might stand. I feel like I might fall asleep.
There's
in
no
this chair.
rules here. You know.
Is it okay?
No, it's all right.
That's all right, thank you. I have to look at Fanny. Patrick, that was beautiful. I love your book. I love the book, and I love the reading. And it's great to share the day with you and to share the drive out and back. If you want to know what Patrick and I do in Western Massachusetts, we shoot a lot of pool. Right? Like
Yes.
a couple of times a week.
We're almost good.
That's
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
we can talk about this later. I'm almost good.
But I'm really happy to be here and thank Michael Franco because he's just been this undying influence and force in Boston for all the, in Cambridge and Boston all these years. So thank you for having me. All right, so I'm going to start with some new poems. It's actually a chapbook called New Poems. It's Truth in Advertising. Speech acts for a dying world. A field sparrow is at my window, tapping at its reflection. A tired New England god trying to communicate. It's getting to me. As I set out to sing the nimbus of flora under a partly mottled sky, as I look at the end and sing, so what, sing, live now, thinking, why not? I'm listening and receiving now, and it feeds me. I'm always hungry when the beautiful is too much to carry inside my winter, when my library is full of loss, full of wonder, as the polis is breaking and casts a shadow over all of me, thinking of it, when the shadows fall in ripples, when the medium I work in is deathless and I'm living inside one great example of stubbornness, as my head is stove in by a glance, as the day's silver-tipped buds sway in union, waving to the corporate sky, when I said work and meant lyric, when I thought I was done with a poem as a vehicle to understand violence. I thought I was done with a high-toned, shitty world, done with a voice in its constituent pap. Call down the inherited phenomenal world when it's raining in the book, lost to the world in an abundance of world, like listening to a violin when the figure isn't native but the emotion is. When everything is snow and what lies ahead is a mesmer's twirling locket. I thought I was done with the marvel of ephemeral shadow play, the great design, and all that. I thought I was done with time, its theatricality, glamour, and stuff. Gusting cloud, I see you, I become you in my solitary thinging here in partial light. When I said voice, I meant the whole unholy grain of it. It felt like paradise. Meaning rises and sets, now a hunter overhead, now a bear at the pole, and the sound of names, the parade of names. The present is constant elegy. Those years when I was alive, I lived the era of the fast car. There were silhouettes in gold and royal blue, a half-light and tire marks across a field. Times when the hollyhocks spoke. There were weeds and a hopescape as in a painted backdrop there is also a face. And then I found myself when the poem wanted me in pain, writing this. The sky was always there but useless, and what of the blue flocks on stage and morphing? Chance blossoms so quickly, it's a wonder we recognize anything, wanting one love to walk out of the ground. Passion comes from a difficult world. I'm sick of twilight when the light is crushed. Time unravels its string. Along the way, I discovered a voice, a sun-stroked path choked with old light, a ray already blown. Look at the world, its veil. This is a little nutty. It's called Every Day I Want to Fly My Kite. Give the world to the world, time to the flood. Give ash to gardens and grain to trees. I am not cowed by the superlative nature in trees. I am lifted and see petals opening. Give the freckled ground to sun. Give sepulchre to sky, to song. I am not one to disregard thrush, diminish sparrow. Give the arrow to lovers, night to lavender, lavender to sleep, to wing, to want, to wound, to wonder. The night's watch to the optical dawn. Give water to stone, stone to echo. In the mosaic, the dove's wings are made of bits in stone. The world is like this. If I saw it, I felt it. If I felt it, I learned from it. And when the stars enter the horizon, that's Tuesday, gone. The moon, the silk, the corn, the rail. I felt this and it stuck to me one midnight. I was muling. I was alive with fancy and silk and stuff. I was stuffing for a chair, a doll. I was blinking and crying, and now the word falling, now other rains, now organic cyclones and seeds, the deadly swoon and strengthen with color, and the sound of crows and their platinum sheen feeding the sky, flames and greatness towing the names. Give home to the horizon, horizon to mystery, mercy, meaning. I thought I might try to head out the door. The door, it doesn't matter. I go as long as I go, and if you're there to sparrow, sparrow. Sky burial. The robin that lives in my yard also lives in me. This is the interior, while the state unwinds across a vast expanse, splitting the sky. It is all of it and more. These things were passages of the light-born afternoon, cascading, then expanding like a flange around the day. Yes, the day, staccato in its azure and gold banner. Then one learns, as one learns from twilight, how to look through here and not here. Grinning. The wisteria out my window is waving up, down, up. It's so far away though, outside. I'm in here where the word is opening. There are distances, the whole tonal range blooming, clarity of attenuated looking, a payload delivering meaningful dust. It's a good day to die. It's an upbeat book, isn't it? It is for me, it's just how it goes.
It's one big advertisement for Amherst.
There's not much going on out there, I know, sorry. This one's actually really a valley poem because we live in the Westover Air Force Base out there where the evidence of the military is constantly in the valley because they're constantly, they work on the jets and on this thing called the Lockheed Galaxy, the C-5A, which is the largest plane in production. It's a carrier plane, and they're constantly overhead because they're always working on them. This is where they service them. So it's a really weird thing. So after 9/11 and going into the Bush doctrine, they were just, the sky was filled with them. And now it's filled with them again. Yeah, we're back. At any rate, after that, that I saw the light on Nonotuck Avenue, that every musical note is a flame native in its own tongue, that between bread and ash there is fire, that the day swells and crests, that I found myself born into it with sirens and trucks going by out here in a poem, that there are other things that go into poems, like the pigeon, cobalt, dirty windows, sun, that I have seen skin in marble, eye in stone, that the information I carry is mostly bacterial, that I am a host, that the ghost of the text is unknown, that I live near an Air Force base and the sound in the sky is death, that sound, like old poetry, can kill us, that there are small things in the poem, paper clips, gauze, tater tots, and knives, that there can also be emptiness fanning out into breakfast rolls, macadam, stars, that I am hungry, that I seek knowledge of the ancient sycamore that also lives in the valley where I live, that I call to it, that there are airships overhead, that I live alone in my head out here in a poem near a magical tree, that I saw the light on Nonotuck Avenue and heard the cry of a dove recede into a rustle, that its cry was quiet light falling into a coffin, that it altered me, that today the river is a camera obscura bending trees, that I sing this of metallic shimmer, sing the sky, the song, all of it, and wonder if I am dying, would you come back for me? This is a title poem of my last book called Archeophonics, which I think of as the retrieval and archaeology of lost and buried sound, which is really one of the things that we do as poets, is bring back the gestures and the diction of the poets before us. We bring them back into the world of light and speech. I think that's how it goes, one poet after another. I mean, I like to think that I'm just a class of worker that's been here for thousands of years. Not me, but the class of worker as poet. All right, that's enough. Sorry.
Keep going.
I'm being filmed, that's why I don't want to
Preach
talk. Archeophonics. I'm just visiting this voice. I'm just visiting the molecular structures that say what I am saying. I am just visiting the world at this moment, and it's on fire. It's always been on fire. I'm saying this, and it's saying me. That's how it works, seesaw-like. The archive in the mouth, and the archive is on fire. That's the story. The sun in the body, and the body in the sun. It was like this, just like this, the world that's coming toward me, and the world around me. Around me are words saying this, saying fire, saying something, or all of it. Release the darkness to new lichen. But I found a way to say no to the wood in my house. It kept creaking, wouldn't stop talking. I found a way to say no. I need to be standing in the warmth of the wood that the sun made. I need to find myself dissolving, otherwise it is all, otherwise I'm lost. Did I say that? I saw the frill of light today walking on the path. Could you hear the stirring in the wood, pine needles in the branches? Was it wind or a creature? Am I here or is it over? This was the first day, the nothing day in the nothing year. It gave me courage. It gave hints of blue, clouds electrical and dancing. It gave me rays I've never seen, shooting down, touching things. This was the first day. Sorry if some of you guys have heard these poems before. Really slow writer. This one is called, because you probably heard this story, I wrote this poem in Emily Dickinson's bedroom.
It's funnier each time.
It was creepy. This Michael Medeiros, who was running the Dickinson house, invited poets to spend an hour in Emily Dickinson's bedroom. And he called me, and I said, that's great, but I'm busy. Because that was a really creepy ask. And then he called me like 6 months later, and I said, you know, I'm still busy. And then he called me like a year later, and I hadn't been writing, and I was like, okay, I'll go, I'll try anything. So I took her poems with me in my notebook, and I wrote this poem. And it takes a title, it's the opening of one of her great poems. This world is not conclusion. When I look out your window, I see another window. I see a wedding in my brain, a stylus and a groove, a voice waving there. When I look out your window, I see another window. These trees are not real. They grow out of air. They fell like dust. They fell. So singing is seeing, and vision is music. I saw diadems and crowns, daisies and bees, ribbons, robins, and discs of snow, sprung effects. and pencil light. When I look out your window, I see another window. I see a fire and a girl, crimson hair and hazel eyes, a public in the sky. When the world comes back, it will be recorded sound. That cooing shrub will be known as Dickinson. The syllabic, fricative, percussive, emphatic will tear open out your window. I see another window. I see a funeral in the air. I see alabaster space. I read circumference there. I've been up here for a while, right? So I'm just cutting poems out. Let me try this one. This one's,
You're fine.
yeah,
There's no time limit here.
well, I'm not gonna, okay, all right. This one's
When,
called,
when people start going out the doors, then you can worry.
all right. All right. This one's called Bewitched. Not the TV show. Yeah. Bewitched. When I looked to the east, I could not find you in the west where the light is dying. You were not there. Northerly the sky grew pitch, silence to the south, there was only billowing. Now to go over to greet the small wind as the huge blows by, hornblind and feathered. What is this former swaying, this deep pomp, beyond and waiting, crouched and magnified? Is the word a cunning bird? Even in new dark I will not be quiet, the feathering covering me. I will not turn away, showing my face, and love the words pouring from your mouth. Polyphony, it was a music to me, a freaky effluvium entering me, lit with that speak, with its thick embryonic music, born into a strange new light, darker than any like I had known before. Polyphony spoke to me. It was a language to eat the sky, a language to say goodbye, standing with others, standing in the dust. The old language continues its dialogues in ordinary dust. Now the sun was a bower of rusty cables, its deep center flashing, welding this room to silence, an ascension hard and hauling heaves above the time and its tether. When I think all you have done, I think on all of this, and you know the way I trod the path dissembled with leaves under the ghosting shades an elm made, and discovered the pages of my book open to greet me. In the poem, I am thick with dream, my limbs heavy, forcing myself to wake into striated dusks, rising through the stratum, a question in my brain. Sentences in a synapse field. For I wanted sound to dig into sound, for snow and blood, for wine and mirrors, for electrons and electricity, for debris, for damaged art, our collective fortune, future. For as long as there have been soldiers, there have been poets. For as long as poets, there has been a bridge. For I wanted to hold a room in silence, for debris flooding back into a wave. For as long as particles a charge, for it should be incredulity to be alive, for these things that can be told until mystery becomes elegy, for it was March going into April, for the day was speaking the day, for what you thought, for what you buried, for who you are. I've gone off my script. It's okay, I'll read these instead. These are a bunch of poems I haven't read this one before. It's called Instagrammer. These lost stars tomorrow, will they be there when we wake in our sorrow? Is it us so lost in the moment? Is it today we look to flower? If it were because the time we saw and loved, if it was because we are and should be this, the way it was then, we find it glowing, this our future and bravado. We say, how could this be? When did this happen? That we'll find ourselves somewhere else in some future laughing. Why is it incompatible? I mean, what does it matter whether the ship were in the trees or the ground was in the water? The stars doubled in the river, the stars once floating in past futures we ran to. If it all seems dizzy and mayhem, if it all seems promised and ordained, our future is in the air. Rapper frag. The world today is slowcore, a rhythm section dragging. At the moment I drag in solo in a bitten landscape, torn vowels that sound out vowel, or sadness like glitter sprinkled in a mind. A sun/parking lot thinking of poems stalled in the broken surround. See the chubby kid dazed, his spilled bike, more debris, CVS in the distance. Remember me to convenience stores. I saw this too every life of my day, yet I ate. I had money and a car. Am I having a stroke? All right, last one from this, and I'll read one more, two more. Strangeness becomes you. The old language is the old language. It don't mean shit. It's not where you begin. It's how you finish. Everyone's got beer muscles when they're young. Try as you must, break as you will, solo in space, clinging to space. Fuck, the air said, passing a corner, a long ropey snot hitting a gutter, to know something and fail. Why discount it? The onslaught of eyes beneath a fuck you sky. The syntax breaks down its mangled draft and says, one day the poor will have nothing to eat but the rich. I hate that, when syntax connects me to the rich. I'm going to finish with a poem from Threshold Songs, and entitled Bardo. And I read it because so many people knew my brother Michael, and hopefully I won't cry when I read this. See, you started? Okay, so this poem, the Bardo in the Buddhist state is after the soul leaves the body. For 49 days it looks back over its life before it transcends or translates or whatever transformation occurs. But for 49 days it looks back. And I wrote this poem in my notebook at Swan Point Cemetery when they were cremating my brother. And something passed by me. And I think this is the poem that led into my other poems. Bardo. I've spent my life in a lone, mechanical whine, this combustion far off. How fathomless to be embedded in glacial ice. What piece of self hiding there? I am not sure about meaning, but understand the wave. No more Novalis out loud. No Juan de la Cruz singing, I do not die to die. No solstice, mid-haven, midi, nor twilight. No, isn't it amazing? No, none of that. To crow, to crow, to crown, to cry, to crumble. The trees the air warms into, a bright something, a bluish nothing, into clicks and pops, bursts and percussive runs. I come with my asymmetries, my untutored imagination, heathenish, my homespun vision sponsored by the winter sky. Then someone said nether, someone were, and if I say the words, will you know them? Is there a world? Are they still calling it that? Thanks. All right.
let's not leave this place.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you all for coming. Well, we're back in 2 weeks with Ken Taylor, one of Mr. Corbett's stable, that'll be reading his self-portrait as Joseph Cornell.
Oh, nice.
It should be fun. It is a great
Yeah.
book. I was just one of those you pick up when it comes in the mail from Bill, and you go, "Holy crap!" What do you got going? There's something coming, right? At the poetry room.
Two things. Well, she's reading with John Keane.
Oh, nice.
And what date?
April 11th.
She being Fanny Howe, for those
Sorry.
who can't see.
And Kazim Ali and Steph Bird are reading.
Oh, great.
Michael, may I say something?
Of course. Yes, because.
I would love to know the publisher of your book, because I haven't actually held it in my hands. It was so moving. I felt your brother in all of them. I think the publishers of our books are important. Patrick's book happens to be published by Robert and Elizabeth Murphy, who just also published my most recent book, and I just wanted to thank them.
I'm glad you acknowledged them, Don. Thanks.
And
Yeah.
you may add on, if you want, sort of like Christina was asked to do. I'm reading from that book tomorrow night at Porter Square for any of you who are able to attend. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Got anything going? Thank you all for coming. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
And thanks to Miss Pinto back there for filming. Bread, wine, cheese, please relax, talk amongst yourselves. If you're wandering around, fold up your chairs.
So this is going to be on YouTube or something? Okay. Well, great. Sure.